I think we should all take into consideration where we want to be next. Do we want a healthier community?
Who do we want to be, you know?
Who do we want to be? Do we want to be just some selfish, over-consumed society that doesn't care about the next generation? And I think we have an obligation to the next generation that they should be better than us.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Box Office Pro, the only publication in North America exclusively dedicated to covering the world of theatrical exhibition. Once again joined by my co-host, Rebecca Pahle, deputy editor at Box Office Pro. And in our feature segment, you've got an interview with an independent exhibitor here in New York City, Rebecca, part of our sponsored Indie Focus series with Spotlight Cinema Networks.
Yeah, indeed, Daniel. This is an interview with Nick Nicolaou. You can find it in print in our September edition. You know, you and I were both really big fans of exhibition history, specifically New York exhibition industry, and specifically the New York exhibition industry and the deep history of it. And Nick actually owns 3 theaters, one in Manhattan, one in Queens, and the one in Brooklyn, where this episode's interview was actually recorded, is the oldest operating movie theater in the 5 boroughs. So it's a beautiful location. It was really exciting to speak to someone who really loves exhibition with everything he has. So it was good to geek out with him on that.
And that's the Alpine Cinema, right? Not too far from where you're located over in Brooklyn.
Yep, it's Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. It's pretty much a straight shot on the B-32 bus.
And as I mentioned earlier, that interview is part of our Indie Focus series. We've got Nat here, Rebecca. Why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. This episode of the Box Office Podcast is brought to you by Spotlight Cinema Networks, the only cinema advertising company dedicated to serving the needs of art house, luxury, and dine-in exhibitors for cinema advertising, pre-show entertainment, event cinema, and digital display distribution. Spotlight offers unique revenue-generating advertising programs tailored to an upscale and influential cinema audience. In collaboration with Box Office Pro, Spotlight Cinema Networks is proud to present Indie Focus, a monthly interview series profiling industry thought leaders, iconic art houses, and executives from the country's leading luxury and dine-in cinema circuits. To find out more about Spotlight Cinema Networks, visit spotlightcinemanetworks.com.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to our partners at Spotlight Cinema Networks for their support of the Box Office Podcast and Box Office Pro in general. But let's go into everything that we've got here before we tackle those Q2 earnings highlights, Rebecca. I know that you have a film series that you go to every single month here in New York City. It's at the Nighthawk, right? It's the surprise martial arts screening.
Yeah, I try to make it every month. It's called Sundays on Fire, and every month it is a surprise. You have no clue what it's going to be, except it's going to be Hong Kong action of some sort. And yesterday it was a movie called Tiger Cage. It was quite fun. A lot of explosions, a lot of Donnie Yen, but like Q's a baby. So yeah, not a lot to see new at the box office now. And I could catch up on the things that I haven't seen yet, or I could see a random Hong Kong action movie on the big screen. And I'm happy with my choice. Speaking of new releases, Daniel, I've been hearing a lot about Prey, which was a Predator spin-off prequel that debuted on Hulu. You saw it and had some thoughts about that one, right?
Yeah, this was the first time I think I see an original film in Hulu. No, never mind. I had seen a different movie on Hulu. What was that? Palm Springs. That was supposed to go on theatrical, and that went straight to Hulu.
Barb and Star, our favorite comedy of 2020.
Yes, that went straight to Hulu as well. What a pity. I loved Barb and Star, and I actually really liked Palm Springs as well. Hulu on a roll, I think, with the movies that they've made exclusive to their service. With Prey, the Predator prequel, in my opinion, probably as good as the original Predator. This is a movie that actually became Hulu's most watched premiere in the streaming platform's history. It's the sort of movie that I think really would have fit in really well on the schedule. If we look at this weekend at the box office, Rebecca, there was only one new opener in the top 10, and it fell in 10th place. That was Lionsgate's Fall, which ended up with around 2.5 million in its opening weekend. Everything else was a holdover. The number one title, Bullet Train, held over from the previous weekend, only made 13 million in its second frame. It really would have been a fantastic opportunity for this 20th Century Studios title to go out on theatrical, make a dent at the box office. These Predator sequels, prequels, they've never done fantastic numbers. But this is a specific release scenario where I really think this movie, Prey, would have done decent business at the box office had they given it a theatrical run. Unfortunately, it stuck to streaming. Great movie, though. I highly recommend it.
I'll have to check that one out, though. You saying it's as good as the Predator now? The original Predator, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to see it now because that's a high bar to clear.
It's a high bar to clear. Also, all the other Predator sequels have sucked. We have to call it like it is. And no, this one was actually quite good. It reminded me a lot of like a throwback James Cameron movie. It has a lot of those same vibes. Great action, decent special effects. They didn't go all in on the CGI with the Predator. There were a lot of practical elements to it as well. Highly recommended. But, we're looking here at some of these streaming premieres. We're looking here at the calendar with the box office going through these late summer doldrums. If I look at the Netflix top 10 from the first week in August, I'm also seeing 2 Netflix titles that are doing decently well in streaming that I wonder if they've had similar success with those circuits that are playing Netflix movies, either in like a 1-week exclusivity run Cinemark is doing, or maybe other folks that play them day and date. You have titles like The Gray Man, the Russo brothers movie that has done really well over its first 3 weeks streaming on the Netflix platform. And a breakout hit here, Purple Hearts, a drama from Netflix coming in under the radar, topping their most streamed list of titles on the service. We know a lot more circuits play Netflix than maybe they admit to. It's not really something that's spoken about, although more and more majors and more independents are booking Netflix titles. But I think it all adds up to really wanting to see streamers like Netflix, like Hulu, find a better middle ground with theatrical to fill in these gaps in the schedule. I don't think anyone is imagining these Hulu and Netflix movies to be super blockbusters in theaters. But you got to think that they really would have made an impact at any point in the month of August, and they could have really done something in the market in September, which is also barren with releases.
I mean, you mentioned middle ground, Daniel, that middle ground between a streaming release and a full theatrical release. And I think we see that with Event Cinema. We're seeing the headlines of Clerks 3, which had its debut on Fathom Events. Obviously, Clerks 3, it's Kevin Smith. He has a large fan base, and they're adding more dates because it did bring in the audience for that small amount of screenings that Fathom originally planned. So that's the potential here. It doesn't have to be some gigantic big release. It can be something that's a little more, let's say, organic and grassroots in terms of its promo.
Absolutely. Fathom is an example of an event cinema company that is coming in and working with exhibitors. There's other examples, Cinelife Entertainment from our partners at Spotlight. We've also got Trafalgar and Iconic Events releasing. Iconic, actually, which has worked with some Netflix titles, bringing them to theaters. So we've seen event cinema in examples like this one, working with streamers or coming in with original titles, really sneak into high grosses at the box office during this time. Hopefully the upcoming release schedule from our event cinema partners can help. Really this box office that isn't really on a winning streak as of late. It's going to be another rough weekend, Rebecca. We've got 2 new releases coming out next weekend, and it's a neck and neck race to see who ends up number 1. We've got Beast, a title with Idris Elba. I think he's fighting lions in this movie.
Just one lion.
That sounds like a cool high concept.
But it's a really ticked off lion. It's a lion, but it's a mean lion.
Stringer Bell versus lion, singular. I'm in on it. I want to see what happens. And then you've got an anime release, Dragon Ball Super Hero, opening up this weekend in North America. We don't know who's going to end up number 1 there. I think it's really going to be neck and neck to see who emerges from that battle. But you did get to speak with a filmmaker of Beast for our magazine. That interview is now up online. Rebecca, what were some of your highlights from the conversation?
Well, the director of Beast is an Icelandic director named Balthazar Kormákur. He's directed Everest, who's directed several kind of man versus nature movies over the last few years. Insert actor here versus a lion. He is an actor who I would trust to do that. But, it made me excited to kind of see the movie, hearing him talk about his approach to special effects. Obviously, it's not a real lion. You can't really get away with doing that in the movies nowadays. It is a CGI lion. Sometimes you see these big special effects and nothing looks like it really has weight. you see things just kind of bouncing along and it doesn't look real. From the trailers, I mean, it does look like this is Idris Elba and his two filmic teenage daughters, and Charlton Copley, who I always really do like because he takes it to 11, and I appreciate that. If you're going to be in a man versus lion movie, that's what you got to do.
This anime title that is opening up this Dragon Ball movie, they always overperform at the box office, especially in opening weekend. I haven't seen a single Dragon Ball product. Are you familiar with that at all, Rebecca?
It is something that my younger brothers both really liked. It was kind of that 90s, early aughts, rush home from school anime craze. That said, I know the mythology of the Dragon Ball universe is it's an expansive world, and I'm not sure how the different pieces fit together. Hey, it's not something I'm personally interested in, but I always like seeing these niche products go out to find their audiences on the big screen.
And on the exhibition news side of things, we have some updates here from our coverage on boxofficepro.com. Cineworld and IMAX, Rebecca, actually expanding their partnership, going to open a lot more new locations by 2026 across the UK, the US, and Europe, which is going to bring the total number of upgrades and new installs of IMAX in the Cineworld global circuit to 52 within 4 years. That's an interesting evolution here when we talk about the progress of premium format. As we know, Cineworld has also invested heavily with the 4DX and ScreenX technology. That looks to be paying off for some recent blockbusters. I was looking at a press release recently. ScreenX and 4DX combined to over $50 million in box office in those specific formats for Top Gun Maverick. An important sort of milestone here for PLF. And elsewhere in Europe, Rebecca, Cinépolis is actually adding new locations in Spain.
Cinépolis, a Belgium-based multinational chain, operates as Landmark Cinemas of Canada in Canada and MJR Digital Cinemas here in the U.S. They've concluded a lease agreement with a real estate company to take over 2 cinemas in Spain, those being a 12-screen in the city of Mataró and another one in Marbella with 8 screens. So we're continuing to see some of that consolidation that we're seeing here in North America expand out to other markets as well. Obviously, in Europe, these markets are still all recovering. And then on the other side of things, another piece of news that we got over the last week, Daniel, kind of bouncing off of the success of ScreenX and 4DX and Cineworld going more towards IMAX and just really premier amenities. We have some news from Cinépolis of them providing a bigger experience to their moviegoers.
That's right. Cinépolis actually committing to install Cinionic laser projection at all their locations globally. That's nearly 7,000 screens and 868 cinemas across 19 countries. That's a massive, massive deal. And when we talk about this deal, it's not about PLF per se, it's about your standard auditorium and raising that standard. We've been talking about that a lot as we've discussed the need to compete more with these in-home entertainment technologies. Cinépolis making a big, big move here, committing to putting laser projection from Cinionic in all of its movie theaters around the world. I think that's really good news for moviegoers, and I'm excited to see how that develops, because that's going to be completed by 2025. So we're going to see a lot of these installs coming in through the next coming years at Cinépolis locations, both here in the US and all over the world.
Yeah, we are seeing the baseline tech definitely get higher and higher in terms of the quality that a cinema is expected to have nowadays. But in terms of drawing in moviegoers, there's the technology part, and then there's also the programming piece and the theater itself and what goes on there. Daniel, we get press releases kind of all day about the goings on in the exhibition world. My favorite from last week, I gotta say, is Michigan-based chain Emagine Entertainment has partnered with a live events company to turn one of their movie theaters into like a haunted house, but it's a movie theater. It's called Ghosts on the Balcony. It's actually, apparently, this theater is supposed to be haunted. I don't know. I always like that stuff. I know, I think it was 2020, there was a cinema in Canada that auctioned off, or it had a contest of you get to haunt the movie theater when you die. I like all that kind of stuff. But I mean, Emagine is the chain that has recently installed sports betting kind of bar / venue in one of their cinemas. So, we've had those discussions about different things that cinemas can do that aren't just screening movies to draw in moviegoers. And this is one of the more innovative ones that I've seen. Yeah,
and as you mentioned, Rebecca, that idea of a sports book in a movie theater that Emagine launched alongside the Caesar Sports Book, also in Michigan. That's something that I'm actually writing. I'm preparing that story for our next print magazine. And this haunted movie theater in Birmingham, Michigan, it's going to launch on October 1st. It's going to be there until the end of October. Just a very fun and quirky way to go to the theaters. That sounds like the type of movie theater that I'd love to go see Halloween Ends once it comes out in mid-October. And talking about movie theaters that are always interesting and nice to go back to, we love independent exhibition, Rebecca. And one of the last remaining, if not last, I don't know if they're the last guy standing, at least in Manhattan, but definitely among the last in New York City, Nicolas Nicolaou, that you interviewed, the proprietor of Cinema Village in Manhattan, Alpine in Brooklyn. If there's one Queens theater, that's in Forest Hills. What's the name of that cinema?
That is the Cinemark Cinema up in Queens. I believe it's Floral Park. Yeah, Daniel, I don't know if you remember, pretty much right after cinemas in North America shut down in March 2020, Kino Lorber, obviously one of the first distributors to really go into the virtual cinema model, helping cinemas kind of stream movies and still be able to get some money, even if they're not physically open. They did a really neat thing with an older movie of theirs, not older, a few years older, called The Projectionist, where they let cinemas screen that movie in their virtual cinemas free of charge, just as a, here, movie theaters, we appreciate you. We want you to be able to screen things. It was a really nice gesture, and I imagine some cinemas made at least some money out of it, which, you needed every penny you could get in 2020. But actually, that film was a documentary about this gentleman who we're about to hear from, Nicolas Nicolaou, who moved from Greece to New York City when he was 15, pretty much right away, started working for movie theaters and has not quit yet. I was thrilled not just to be able to interview him, but to be able to interview him in Alpine Cinema, in the oldest still operating cinema in the 5 boroughs. A similar story from what we saw of a lot of other cinemas during the pandemic. Nick really took the time to renovate the Alpine Cinema. There's this blend of it. I mean, obviously it's a podcast and it's better if you see it, but the place looks gorgeous. I mean, the old school style of it. But then there's also, you have a PLF screen. Technologically, it's in line with what you would see at any of the major chains, it looked to me. So yeah, we're just going to kind of drop you right in the middle of the conversation that the two of us had, geeking out about old movie theaters. And really, he really feels passionate about the importance of them, about how they can and do and will continue to coexist with streaming, how it's not a zero-sum game between the two. So yeah, I'm excited to show clips from this interview, and you can read the longer version in our September issue and also on boxofficepro.com.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and let's take it right away. Here is Rebecca's conversation with Nicolas Nicolaou coming up after the break.
So you come to New York, you're 15, you don't know anybody. At that time, I mean, New York has such great cinemas, everything from neighborhood cinemas to movie palaces. I mean, there's a huge range. What drew you to the neighborhood theaters?
Well, first I started when I was 15. We lived in Astoria, so the first train stop to Manhattan was 59th Street. And in the 70s, that's where all the main theaters were. It was Baronet, Coronet, Cinema 1 and 2, all the art theaters, 68th Street Playhouse, RQ, 59th Street, the D.W. Griffith Theater. It's all within one block, the 57th Street Sutton Place. So I took the train and I went there looking for a job. And a friend of mine used to work in junior high school. So we kind of played a little game, like he called up the last minute. He says, I can't come to work, but, I can send my friend. He's 16. I wasn't even 15. So they hired me.
There you go.
And you get the job, I worked for RKO, which was a very good company. I played all the first run movies. It's like you're talking like AMC today. And I learned a lot of things from there. And then I moved on, because across the street there was other theaters, and there was an art theater up on my right and an adult theater on my left. So every day when I would rip the tickets, I'll see a little adult theater, upscale adult theater, because you're by Bloomingdale's, And you had customers there like Stallone came in there, and all these famous people came in there.
Oh, nice.
To show their friends, because those years it was the in thing, And the other theater was the art theater. I moved on from RKO and worked for these people.
I mean, you could have, you said RKO was like, the AMC back then. You could have just stayed there, but you didn't. You didn't go to those major chains. I mean, when it's time for you to own a theater, you didn't.
Very quickly was offered a assistant manager's job for the art theater. And then a manager. So when you're in a small chain, it was like 10, 15 theaters they had, you get promoted.
Like, what you're doing, we'll let you up the ranks a bit.
Yeah, if you're willing to work hard. And I was going to high school still.
How old were you when you became the manager at the art house?
At the art house? Yeah. I was like 17. But I always lied up a little bit about my age. You
knew the theater better than...
Yeah, of course.
People older, I'm sure.
18, and then when I was 19, the district manager for those 10, 12 theaters decided to take off with one of the female managers we had, a younger girl. So he took the younger girl, and I took his car to cover him, and he didn't come back for months. He must be having a good time. So You just stayed there. You're like, all right, I'll keep doing it. So I kept doing it. And I became like the district manager for these 12 theaters. It was like 5, 6 neighborhood theaters.
When you're like 18, 19?
By that time I was 19, yeah.
Man, you're making me feel like a slacker. I wouldn't do anything like that when I was 19.
Those years were different, man. Those years were different. I mean, in the 70s, New York was a different...
Well, how's the theater scene changed? I mean, aside from the fact that there are just so many that got torn down and replaced with chain stores.
The theaters today, and all the chains, they have beautiful theaters. The theaters are much, much nicer today than they were then. What I feel bad about is that for whatever reason we lost a lot of neighborhood theaters. And the neighborhood movie theater is the magnet of the main street of the area. And it serves more than just an economic anchor. It serves as a social. We're all better off for it. But that obviously doesn't get it when it comes to people that may be only thinking temporarily we need this money and that's it. You got to think long term.
Well, look, because economically too, the neighborhood theaters are vital to these other businesses that surround you.
Nobody's asking to get money or we don't want to pay taxes. But tell me, this theater, when no one was willing to take it, no chain, and nobody, even all the millionaire independents.
You said it was on the market for a year and nobody wanted it. It was on the market
for a year after 3 theaters closed around here, and nobody came to get this theater. Massey and Knuckle had it on their market for $10 million to buy this property, and nobody would buy it. And this would have been, my understanding, was going to be a mosque.
Well, and this isn't just.
And I said, I don't care if it's a mosque or another church. We got enough of those. A movie theater is a church in my eyes. I mean, people can pray at home, right?
Yeah.
I pray at home
Movies
if I want to pray.
Too, so, yeah.
But you still go to church, right? People still go to church. Yeah, you can watch your movie iPhone, that's cool, and you want to watch it on your iPad or whatever, even though that's not the way a director's intent is for you to watch his movie. Because to me, you like minimizing the value of what his work is. But at least you're watching it, so that's good. But don't eliminate your option to do that and to watch the streaming and go to the movie theater. I'm a businessman, but I love movies, but I love my community because I know what a difference it makes. You don't have a healthy community. We saw it recently with COVID. People are isolated. They lose their health, their mental health, and it's only going to get worse because isolation, you live in your own fantasy, not the real world. It is not healthy.
No.
It's healthier to come out, even you shake hands with somebody, it makes you feel better. Or say hello. You don't have to sit down and have dinner. This is necessary.
Just a friendly 30-second conversation with someone you're buying a ticket from.
These people that make the movies and the people in our business, I strongly believe that we have really decent people that care about humanity and care about the next generation, not to have a bunch of mentally disturbed people, and they will do the right thing. And they're not going to destroy the theaters. They can coexist with their streaming platforms and watching the movies in other forms. That's fine. But it doesn't mean you have to destroy the movie theater.
There's room for everybody.
That it may not be so much room, but I believe people in our industry are not the type that if we kill every other way you can watch a movie, then you have no choice but to subscribe. I don't believe in our industry. I've met a lot of people through these 4-5 decades, and they're decent human beings, and they'll manage to make good profits for their companies and include the movie theaters only because it does make economic sense for them, but it also, we must all do our part to keep our communities healthier. Among other things, a healthy community does.
I mean, just like these community theaters can coexist with the Netflixes and the Hulus, and, there's room for both. Here as well, I mean, you have the dichotomy of the beautiful classic building and, oh my gosh, these fixtures that you found, it's incredible. You have to balance that with, having good presentation and making sure that everything's nice and up to date. I mean, when you're doing renovations on the Alpine, on this one during COVID, I mean, you had to balance, so we want to keep the old and the new.
That's what we did. And at the time when we were doing it, there was no help. I mean, we were getting some PPP and things like that, but what do you pay when you don't have a payroll? That's why I said it was extremely beneficial what Senator Schumer did with championing a bipartisan bill with fellow senators from both parties that was signed into law, and there was relief money given to us. And I'm not going to say, I think without that money, I am more committed now, and I feel...
You made it through something. We all made it through something really major.
Yeah, because I feel that movie theaters are essential to our community. I've made the decision to keep these theaters going regardless of what happens. And I will try to bring as many people to the theaters. Even you've seen every week we get an increase of cost for the concessions. Every week we get a letter. I haven't increased anything in this theater because I am dealing with working class people here, and I don't like to see a family that even comes to the theater to shy away from concessions because we know what concessions cost. That's why we keep even that at lowest possible prices.
You made it through some really tough times. You come back, you're better than before. What are your plans for the future for your three cinemas? I mean, what do you want to do with them?
Well, I believe and I hope and I trust, because I know people that make the movies, there's enough good people that are not going to just push this streaming to people down their throat, and they are better people than that, because it's a bigger picture to include the theaters, because theaters at the end of the day could give them more money in combination of what they're doing. I think we should all take into consideration where we want to be next. Do we want a healthier community?
Who do we want to be,
Who do we want to be? Do we want to be just some selfish,
corporate, generic, money's the only thing that matters,
over-consumed society that doesn't care about the next generation? And I think we have an obligation to the next generation, that they should be better than us.
And that about does it for this week's edition of the Box Office Podcast. Thank you to Rebecca Pahle for that interview, and thank you to Spotlight Cinema Networks for supporting this week's episode. We're going to be back again here next week. New episodes coming out every Thursday on the Box Office Podcast. The Box Office Podcast is produced by Record Edit Podcast in collaboration with Box Office Pro and the Box Office Company. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll talk to you again next week.